Delivering pizza has always been a fun job for me. I get to meet everyone in the town I live on the outskirts of. The pay is all right, but the tips make the job more than survivable for a high school student. Sure, I could spend the weekends partying, but from a young age, I decided I wanted to get out of this town. And the only way I was going to be able to do that was early age saving. When I got my permit license, I immediately decided to hop in the local pizza joint in town that said, hiring today. That Saturday, I took home $150 in tips. Much better than hanging out with the loser jocks at school anyways. Kino's Pizza has been my home on Saturdays and Sundays for the past 4 years. This summer would be my last year there before I packed up and left town. I was nervous and excited, but even more so, happy to take on any shifts I could before the fall came around. Most days were busy. Our pizza was so good. I can understand why I was out of the store delivering pizzas more often than inside waiting to do my menial tasks for the night. Well, every once in a blue moon, the store would slow down. I'd wash dishes and help carry out orders, but mostly surf Reddit, waiting for the next address to pop up for me to head to. The next delivery came in, and I waited for it to be done, chatting with the cute girl at the register before heading out. Once on the road, I started to play my music, and unknowingly, my life was about to change forever. I saw a man on the side of the road with his thumb stuck out. Mom and Dad always told me to keep driving past hitchhikers, but for some reason, maybe because of how slow the store was, and dreading going back and waiting for another delivery, I pulled over. The man was dressed well, almost as if he had just come from a fancy event. I couldn't figure out why someone who looked like this was hitchhiking, but I was unbothered. I thought of my future adventures, leaving this town, and in a way, envied the freedom of this man. The pizza was in the front seat still, steaming in the hot bag, so I popped open the back door. He thanked me softly and stepped in the back of my car. Heading anywhere specific? The man smiled and said, 24 Meadow Avenue. How convenient, I thought. That's a few blocks away from where I'm delivering this pizza. Of course, I brought the food to the customer first, but then we made our way to 24 Meadow Avenue. I haven't seen you before. Are you visiting family? His eyes met mine in the rear view window. No. It was kind of an awkward silence for the next couple of blocks. I let him out and went back to the store. I was happy to have my fun little excursion, because when I got back, there were still no other deliveries up. I just told them I had to grab some gas. The next day, I woke up to my mother and father, making quite the commotion in the living room. I went downstairs to see my mother and father, looking quite timid. There had been a homicide, 24 Meadow Avenue. Chills went down my spine as I realized that I had been there last night with that hitchhiker. Of course, no one knew this, but my parents were shaken up. There hadn't been a murder in the town for over a decade. People weren't used to this, such a peaceful town. The police said they had no leads, but they were still investigating. A whole family had been murdered, and I knew about it. I feared telling anyone, because what if they thought I was a part of it? I figured they'll eventually catch the man, and that'll be it. No harm, no foul. If I didn't bring him there, someone else would. A few weeks went by, and the cops had marked it up as a drifter rolling through town. I hoped so too. Then came along another slow day, almost like clockwork. The man was alongside the road. He wore the same suit as last time. There was no blood on it, though. Maybe it wasn't him after all, and it was just a coincidence. My morbid curiosity got the best of me. I pulled over, and he got in the back, just like last time. "Did you do it?" He said nothing, except for another address. The same smile crept across his face, just like last time. Fearful for my life, I drove him there. I'm sorry, maybe it seems wrong to you, but I was too young to die. After all, why would I have worked at Kino's Pizza for the last 4 years if it was just to die working at Kino's Pizza? I barely slept that night, thinking of what brutal murder I would see on the TV the next day. Of course I was right. This time the news reporter announced, "The police found an interesting clue to these heinous crimes." She looked like she could barely read the next part. "Carved into the bodies," was the words, "Thank you," all over them. I knew this man, this psychopath, was fucking thanking me. It took me about a month to feel normal again, and by then, it was August. Kino, the owner, had asked me to pick up some more shifts, and I agreed. Some employees had quit in fear of the local murders. I felt a little more safe than the rest. Fuck it. More money to get far, far away from this town and these awful memories. You can imagine, at some point, with all these extra shifts adding up, I would see another slow day at work. I did. I knew I would see him again. I planned on just driving by him this time, hoping he would just leave me alone and appreciate how I have already helped him in 2 awful crimes. Sure enough, as I was taking my next delivery, there he was. I sped up quickly as I passed him, holding my breath, praying he didn't notice it was me. I delivered the pizza to the house and decided to take a different way back to the store. I almost hit him when he was standing in the middle of the road. I'm sure most people would have laid their foot on the pedal. But then what? I tell the police this guy was the murderer the whole time, that I hid the truth from them, that I helped him drive there. My car squealed to a stop right in front of him, all while he held his composure. He stepped toward the driver's side. He's going to kill me for not stopping. Why didn't I just let him in and continue with denial? It was him. How will he murder me? He knocked on my windshield, smiling his usual bone-chilling smile. I cracked the window just enough for him to press his lips up to the window. He hissed, "You can pick the address this time." I don't know what came over me. I don't know if it was because I thought I didn't have a choice, or if I was truly this evil. Maybe both. Earlier that year, one of my teachers barely passed me. He was an asshole. I didn't want him to die over it, but I couldn't think of a better option. Tomorrow, he'd be gone, and no one would know. I was the reason why. The man started showing up more often, even on busier days. Sometimes he would say an address, and other times he would smile and say, "You pick." This went on all through August. We had some small conversations from time to time. Actually, let me rephrase that. I would talk, and he would listen. I guess I did it to break the awkward silence. I told him my plans of leaving at the end of the month. Somewhere new, somewhere fresh, somewhere better. The town was on borderline lockdown, and it was about my time to go. I was one of the few workers left who felt comfortable working the nights. Some people called me crazy. They didn't even know how crazy I had become. That's when I picked him up one final time. I knew that, and I'm pretty sure he did too. I'm not going to lie. I was a little sad. We had killed so many school bullies, so many people, that I wouldn't miss from this town. If I wasn't so dead set on leaving, I actually would have liked living in this reformed town. He looked a little somber as he sat in my back seat. He must know it is our last. Hey, buddy, maybe we both can pick one tonight. I'm not sure fully what you're capable of pulling off in one night. Though he looked sad, he firmly said, no. A little disappointed, but for all that he's done for me, I guess it's only fair he gets to choose the last address. 1436 Pine Cove. That was my parents' address. I wouldn't. I can't let this happen to them. How could this man who felt like my friend now want to kill my family? I tried. I really did. I didn't want this for my family, but I really needed to leave. Their lives are lived out, right? We rolled off to my last house I'd drive to before my new life began. I don't think my last customer was entirely human. It was my final delivery of the night. I hadn't initially planned on taking any more, but when it popped up, I figured one more wouldn't hurt. I've never been more wrong about anything in my life. I reread the instructions as I waited for the order. Hand food directly to the customer. Location: Grand Palazzo Hotel, room 1104. I don't usually like delivering to hotels. It can be hard to find free parking, and sometimes you can't even use the elevators without a hotel key. The tip was massive, though. There was no guarantee they wouldn't change it afterwards. But if they didn't, it was going to go a long way towards my food budget for the month. The hotel loomed over me as I pulled in, an imposing figure of dark brick and shadowy stone arches. I couldn't help but notice that of the 15 floors, not a single room appeared to have a light on. The lot was empty, so at least parking wasn't a problem. The only light visible was coming from the lobby, but I couldn't see a single person inside when I approached the glass doors. It was only 8:30 p.m., so I doubted the check-in desk was closed. To my surprise, the doors did open. It was so nice inside that I figured I'd need a room key to use the stairs. There were golden accents in the thick wooden check-in counters, and a wide fireplace was flanked by chairs that were shaped so unnaturally. No person I've ever met could have sat in them. I've never understood why many of the older, ritzier hotels always seem to have dark, floor-to-ceiling wood paneling, but no windows. The ornate chandelier cast weak amber light from vaulted ceilings high above my head. But I still couldn't shake the feeling I was in a box and about to be buried 6 feet underground. My shoes squeaked on the marble floor and echoed loudly in the otherwise silent lobby as I looked for any sign of life. The stark silence put me on edge. Where was everyone? Some of the winding hallways of the lobby were completely dark. The longer I stared into the shadows, the stronger the feeling that something was staring back at me. Something that could see me far better than I could see it. Just moments before, I'd been feeling incredibly alone. I found myself longing for that once more. I messaged the customer, wondering if they'd come downstairs. Maybe I could even wait outside. I smiled at the thought. I wanted out of there, ASAP. Would you like to meet in the lobby? I typed out to them through the app, hopeful. No. I sighed and couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me as I sought out the elevator. I pressed the only button anxiously, and it took me a moment to notice the embossed metal below. It said down despite me being on what appeared to be the ground floor. Sure enough, I could hear the whirring sound of machinery as it approached from beneath my feet. The doors opened to reveal an ancient-looking interior of dark bronze and wood, but there were no buttons, simply what I guessed was a hand crank. I stood there, unsure of what to do for a moment. The doors stayed open, appearing to patiently await my decision. I shuddered at the thought of ending up stuck in some weird basement, or worse, between floors, so I reluctantly headed towards the stairs. It hit me when I reached the second floor. If it was a manual elevator, who'd been operating it on those lower floors? I quickened my pace. Looking back, I wish I'd never gone upstairs. I wish I'd just got the hell out of there. Maybe if I'd turned around and left, my hours wouldn't be numbered. But who knows? Maybe I was doomed from the moment I accepted that order. I complained to myself as I kept climbing upwards, legs burning. At that moment, I was pissed off at everything. I hated the creepy-ass building. I hated the elevator. And I hated the customer for making me walk what would end up being a total of 20 sets of stairs. If I'd known I would be doing that much cardio, I would have brought my freaking inhaler. Further increasing my frustration were the stairs themselves. They started as wide marble steps in the lobby, but on the second floor, transitioned to heavy wood that creaked with each step, tucked into a walled section on the far side of the building. They felt wrong. Some steps seemed wider than others. Some were narrow and shallow. Others were steep. It didn't help that the stairwell was poorly lit, either. The customer kept messaging me over and over as I climbed. "Where are you, Amy?" I was trying to think of a polite way to explain that I was running late because I had to walk up 11 flights of stairs when I tripped and fell, cutting my chin on a jagged piece of wood. By the time I reached the 11th floor, I was nearly crawling, and blood was trickling down the front of my shirt. I leaned against the wall, panting. The blood from my cut seeped into the strangely patterned carpet, which seemed to take it in, thirstily, without leaving so much as a stain. To my relief, the hall was mostly well lit, although there were areas where lights flickered off and on, leaving some sections dark. For the most part, I could see everything from the dark walls to the heavy wooden doors of each room. I realized that there were no room numbers anywhere at all. I sent out a message to ask how I was supposed to find room 1104, and the customer immediately wrote back, "I'll find you." The light above me chose that moment to flicker and die. The moment it did, I was thrown into an absolute darkness, like I'd never experienced before. It felt as if perhaps light had never existed in that place at all. There was just a deep, liquid blackness that forced its way into your nose and mouth, filling your lungs and threatening to drown you. Perhaps, I thought madly, I'd never seen light before at all. Maybe all I'd ever known was darkness. I walked what felt like an eternity, far longer than the few feet of unilluminated hall I'd seen before. I went to brace myself against the wall, just to feel something solid against my fingertips, when I realized the walls weren't there. It hit me then that there was no guarantee I was even walking in the right direction. Crazy thoughts floated through my head. Maybe I'd be stuck there forever, breathing in the blackness, feeling it pour into my skull through empty sockets, because who needs eyes in a place without light? I found myself laughing hysterically at the thought, a wet, sputtering sound, when I bumped into someone in the empty hallway. I say someone because I felt skin and long hair against my bare arm when I brushed against them. "Sorry," I whispered out of habit, before remembering that there hadn't been anyone else in the hall moments before. I just felt something like impossibly long fingers brush against my wrist, and the light flickered back to life. There was still no one else in the hallway with me. I was dazed, eyes trying to adjust to the sudden brightness, as I read the message the customer had sent, while I was lost in the darkness. "Found you." In the distance, I could make out what sounded like something dragging along the carpet. I looked up, just in time to catch a brief glimpse of the source of the sound. It was pulling itself towards me, visible for only a moment before the lights in the section between us went off. The thought of that thing coming towards me, those black pinpoint eyes, its intense hunger, I could almost feel in the air, with nothing between us except for the unlit hallway, filled me with a visceral fear, unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. I couldn't let it catch me in the darkness. I didn't care if the customer complained, and I didn't care if I got banned from the app. I frantically turned back the way I had come, which was once again in the shadows. I paused, desperately hoping that the light between me and the stars would flicker back on. That black emptiness. No, it wasn't empty. It was too much. I trembled at the thought of forcing myself to go back in. The sound of the crawling from down the hall became louder, closer, and was enough to convince me that I couldn't wait. I needed to go back through the unlit section. It wouldn't be as bad the second time. I lied to myself. I ran the entire way. At first, I tried holding my breath, but soon enough found myself gulping in lungfuls of the wet, stale air, choking on it as my airways began to close. I found myself again, becoming disoriented, borderline hysterical, when something pulled at my clothes. Long fingers wrapped around my ankle, pulling me to the ground and dragging me backwards. It brought me back to my senses, and I did the only thing I could think to do. I swung the takeout order behind me as hard as I could. Styrofoam squealed as it connected with something solid. Whatever was in there with me in the dark released me for a moment. It was enough for me to get back on my feet and run until I reached the stairs, which I descended 2 steps at a time, wheezing. I really regretted not bringing in my inhaler. I heard the sound of flesh against wood on the stairs above me. It moved fast, faster than I would have expected it to. I tried to balance speed with caution, because if I fell and it reached me, well, I knew I'd never get back up again. I made it to the lobby and bolted towards the exit, just in time to hear it moving along the smooth marble behind me. I didn't look back. I ran until I was in my car and locked the doors. Only then, exhausted, did I finally glance back into the lobby. There was no one there. Although it felt as if days had passed, my phone said it was only 8:32. I'm still not sure what that place was. I've looked everywhere and can't find any evidence that the building exists or ever had. After that night, I couldn't work my delivery job anymore, even if I wanted to. I've tried signing into the app a few times, but every single order I've been offered since I ran out those doors is for that same hotel. Always room 1104. I'll decline it, and it'll pop up again and again. I still can't go into a dark room or sleep without the lights on. I'm so afraid that when the lights go out, they'll never come back on. For me, at least. I thought once I quit and uninstalled the app, it would finally be over. But then I started getting the texts. I still don't know how they even got my contact information. But I kept receiving, "Where are you, Amy?" over and over. I'd block one number and then get the same message from another. After a couple of days, the texts finally stopped, and for the first time since the delivery, I no longer felt that suffocating sense of dread. Well, until a storm knocked out my power last night, and I woke up to a new text this morning. Found you. A few months back, around 10 p.m., I got a ping for a restaurant that was miles from where I was, which usually signifies an order that no one else wants to take. It looked like an easy pickup and drop-off, so I was a bit confused as to why no one wanted to take it. I take every order that comes my way, so of course, I accept. The pickup was at this quaint little diner on Decatur Boulevard, which looked like it had been there since the 80s at least. I was in and out of there quickly, and nothing really seemed problematic or off. The drop-off was close nearby, on a street filled with ancient, sprawling one-story homes. It was a decaying house with several dead trees in the front yard. It looked like no one had taken care of it for decades. Granted, that's par for the course in some of the older districts of Vegas. But the strangest thing was that the lots on either side of it had been completely razed. There'd been houses there once. That much was clear, but not any longer. There was nothing like that anywhere else on the street that I saw. Every other lot was filled. I had a feeling in the pit of my stomach that I shouldn't go up to the door, but the delivery had to be completed, or I'd get in trouble with corporate. I went up the walk and knocked. There was no answer. I knocked again, harder. No answer. I figured I'd call the number attached to the order before I just left it there. It rang a few times, then picked up. There was silence for a few seconds, and then a click, and the call ended. At this point, I was completely ready to get out of there, so I put the food on the doorstep and turned to leave. I had made it halfway down the walk when I heard the door creaking open behind me. I turned to see who was there. There was no one. The door stood open, revealing a dark and dilapidated hallway, which looked even more decrepit than the rest of the house. It extended back further than the light would allow me to see, but I had the distinct feeling that someone or something was watching me from the end of the hallway. When I made it back to my car, I was literally shaking. All I wanted to do was go far away from whatever was in that hallway. I didn't take any more orders that night, and I didn't get any sleep either. In the morning, I decided to call the number again to see if anyone would answer. It had been disconnected.